All right. What is this Turning Point USA thing, guys? You're gonna need to help me on this.
So on Friday, Turning Point's Kent State chapter decided that they were going to protest safe spaces by dressing up in adult diapers and in a simulation crib.
Socialism or barbarism?
So, Brendan, you want to cut to that?
Okay. So this is great right-wing street theater. So you remember how Abby Hoffman and I think Jerry Rubin, they actually threw money in the New York Stock Exchange, and a bunch of stockbrokers scrambled on the floor and grabbed it.
Right.
This hilarious, actually very revealing piece of provocative street theater that also targeted one of the most powerful institutions on the planet. And the right, and particularly the alt-right, they have always been obsessed with stealing the left's thunder. This is another reason why the left needs to get back in touch with some of its more fun roots, because we really should be the masters of this sort of thing. But the right can never nail it like that. So their attempt to get into the street theater comedy game is dressing up in diapers to mock safe spaces.
And so the national chapter subsequently has distanced themselves with this statement.
So Turning Points USA was so humiliating because the photos are stupid and disgusting and embarrassing and unfunny and blah, blah, blah. And so even it was sort of like Ben Shapiro having to be like, well, actually what we do is we subtly say that the Native Americans were savages and they deserve genocide, but you don't do it as overtly as a cartoon where you literally celebrate them having a genocide. So Turning Point USA, which is some far-right college.
Foster Freeze is
Foster Freeze.
Yeah, right. Youthful fascist brigade.
Right. They're the youthful fascists. They're part of the contingent. They're Foster Freeze, so they have to be the alt-right guys that still also have to be anti-abortion. Foster Freeze was the guy who told, I think it was Andrea Mitchell on MSNBC in 2004 in 2012 or 2011, that back in his day, the girls used to just put something in between their knees.
Oh, a penny between their knees or something like that? That was that guy.
That guy.
Right. Or aspirin between the knees.
Aspirin between the knees as a substitute for birth control. And it was another one of these great examples that if people could ever learn from these things, which is that just because you're a billionaire does not mean you're not a fucking moron. So Kent State, Turning Points USA released this statement on the Kent State quote-unquote safe space event. Yesterday, it came to our attention that one of our chapters did an event opposing safe spaces at Kent State University. While we support all of our chapters to do innovative and creative activism, this event clearly crossed the line and delved into obscure and inappropriate. I think you're just looking for lame and failed. The attention of the event was to criticize safe spaces, which we support. However, the execution and choice of imagery was in poor taste. Some ideas work great. Other ideas get a mixed reaction. We are strong opponents of the safe space, microaggression, trigger warning culture, blah, 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 that has been created on campuses. In particular, the event was not approved by our regional or local field staff. We remain committed to advancing the ideals of free speech and free market on college campuses, network each and every day, blah, 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 snooze.
I was simply trying to fix the culture in many ways.
Exactly. It is really amazing. Okay, so free market, fuck the free market, okay? But I actually, there's no one in this room that actually opposes, free speech and open debate. But the fact that these idiots have so toxified that brand that you do start going back and you're like, maybe we have to do a revisionist history of Stalin, because if all those people were this fucking annoying,
got to deal with it somehow.
I mean, at some point you got to do some tough stuff. I mean, if you're still in college and you think dressing up as a diaper, I'm like, okay, this is just I know that this is it's already, we've talked about college campus shit more than it should ever be talked about in a public forum. But okay, can you find examples? Okay, there was a thing in Berkeley the other day where these college students, they demanded that a final be canceled because it was oppressive because they were stressed. Okay, yeah, that's pretty funny. can always find, and I wish I had thought of that while I was in college. It seems like a great scam. But like, okay, you can always find examples of stupid behavior. And by the way, at an incredibly small amount of
By
colleges.
older adolescents.
By older adolescents. And by the way, like an incredibly narrow amount of colleges. And then there's a substantive conversation. Should colleges disrupt and ridicule and mock and, give some noxious person like Charles Murray a hard time when he comes to campus? Absolutely. Should they go to the administration and say that they should be canceled? I don't think so. And I primarily don't think so for practical reasons, because I think that those types of rules and that type of empowerment of administration is almost certainly going to end up getting used against the actual left. So there's like one lane of like, anybody can find a silly example from a college, and then there's one lane of like, oh, we should actually have some subtlety and conversation about this, I guess, particularly if you work on a campus and that's your life. And then there's like this third track where like the origin of trigger warnings are like, I got triggered a couple of weeks ago when we had that guest on from University of Michigan who talked about stress and cortisol levels and inequality. Because I thought about some of the things that I experienced in my childhood and some of the things that my family went through, and so I got stressed. Okay, and that's fine, and I know how to manage it, and it's my job and whatever. But literally the origin of a fucking trigger warning was to say like, we're going to read about a rape case. Maybe if you've been raped, you should be aware of that before we go into the details of this case. That's it. And if you have a problem with that or think that that is somehow like out of the bounds of intellectual discourse or limiting you to the exposure to the really great fresh ideas of like overcompensated pseudoscientific racists,
Stephen Molyneux.
yeah, or some cult leaders or whatever. I mean, I just, Stephen Molyneux, like what is it, some YouTube idiot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just complete morons.
Yeah, just some morons. I mean, okay, whatever. But like, the origin is basically just like some sort of just basic human sensitivity. Now, can anything get taken and abused? Sure, but in the vast majority of cases of how these things are deployed in college campuses, to the extent that they're deployed at all, it's just a little like, hey, might want to look out for that. I mean, are these the same people, at least in the Foster Freeze case, maybe some, young alt-right people and their libertarian, like, do you pose ratings on video games and movies? I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe they're stupid. Maybe they don't work. But, like, it's the same principle. It's just like, hey, heads up.
Well, it's a basic...
It's not that complicated.
It's a basic tactic, though, that you'd rather spend... you're going to spend some time arguing if you're on the right.
Right.
So you want to make the debate about whether you have the right to say the shit rather than what you're actually saying, because that debate's fucking over.
That debate. Well, that's what they're reopening, right? Exactly.
But they don't want to say they're reopening these things. The people that want that reopened, they'll find them through because this is all a giant dog whistle.
Exactly. And I just watched a movie on the plane the other week. I cannot remember the name of it, but it was about the David Irving case. And David Irving is the Holocaust-denying British historian, and he sued a Jewish Holocaust scholar who taught, I think, in Emory. And he sued her. She called him a quack or something. He sued her in British court, where libel is like, tilted in favor of the
First Amendment's a good amendment.
First Amendment's a very good amendment. So he sued her in Britain because the burden was on her to prove that he, was a quack essentially, versus the burden on him to prove that she was libeling him. And the whole beginning of that movie, when he confronts her in public, and all of the tactics that he uses as a Holocaust denier are all, she won't debate me. She won't air out ideas in public. It's all the same hustle and the same bullshit that you hear from these people. And it's all in service of exactly what you'd expect. Racism, Holocaust denial, misogyny, anti-Semitism.
Incidentally, David Irving is colleagues with Susan Gorka, who helped him with some translation work, I believe.
The missus has some very strong ideas about the Holocaust. Jesus Christ. Oh, these people are all so disgusting. All right.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos